Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Luke Mardigian, and you are listening to Be Insured, where we talk about business, leadership, and insurance. That way, on your worst day, when you need it the most, you will be insured. Nothing is worse than hiring somebody into your culture that you've worked so hard to protect, only to have them flop and leave after 3 or 4 months. It erodes trust in your leadership, trust in your decision-making, and it's toxic to your environment. So if that's you and you're feeling frustrated or fooled by candidate after candidate, or feeling guilty because you spotted red flags in the interview process, but you didn't recognize them or acknowledge them because you needed to fill a position, or if you're just one of those people who hires the first breathing human who walks through the door, then today's episode is for you. And we've got a guest who is going to offer some tremendous tips on how you can avoid some of those common hiring mistakes and make sure that your next hire is a perfect fit. Wes Wright has a decade of experience recruiting top talent for organizations of all sizes, and he just played a major role in helping me hire a director of operations at the Mardigian agency. Wes, thanks so much for being on today's show.
Yeah, hey guys, thankful to be here. Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
And I'm also excited to be joined by my awesome co-host,
Eric Gestring, the Mardigian agency.
Wes, before we dive into the topic, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so, as Luke said, name's Wes Wright, and I do have about 10 plus years kind of running staffing firms and doing hiring here in the U.S. And, currently really excited, actually, a few things going on, but, part of an amazing team at a company called Unleash CEO. Really, it's a consulting company that helps entrepreneurs scale through implementing processes and systems and finding top talent. And what I've done is taken my own business and merged with them to more holistically help companies. And then also, just kind of a side note, have e-commerce business as well. But we'll leave that for another conversation.
Yeah, I didn't know about that part. We'll have to talk about that offline probably.
That's awesome. Hey, Wes, this is Eric. What are some of the biggest things companies or mistakes that companies tend to make during the hiring process that you've noticed?
That's a great question. And I think the number one thing is thinking they have just a people problem, right? They go to hire and they think, you know what, our problems, our issues will be solved if we get the right person in the seat. And that's absolutely part of it. But they fail to address the leadership in their organization, the systems in the organization, whether it's tech, whether it's sales. And so by not making sure those things are aligned first and make sense, you can really set yourself up and the person you're bringing in for failure.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, one of the pieces that you didn't touch on was culture.
Yeah.
I know, we're going to get into the hiring of our director of operations, but that was the ultimate, that was the pivot. That was actually the pivotal decision-making point, was
how well you fit the culture,
whether they fit the culture or not. And so many businesses don't even, either they don't actually know what their culture is, or they haven't worked to develop a specific culture.
Wes, how do these mistakes that you just mentioned, and then the cultural mistake Luke mentioned, keep business owners from hiring the right people?
Well, I talk a lot in the hiring process about onboarding, right? And people have a misnomer really of what that is. And so, it's what you do with them really all the way through the first year, honestly, after you bring somebody on. And so if you bring somebody in and you're not really prepared to have them and to welcome them to your team and have some other ducks in a row, specifically the leadership aspect or the systems aspect, you may not have what you need, Eric, to really get them off on the right foot, and they can get disenchanted with the opportunity, right? And culture is certainly a part of that. If you bring somebody in and you don't, as a business, really have an identity and know who you are, then you don't know who you're looking for on the front end, right? And so bring somebody in and you find out, they don't really fit in here with our values, with our team, and that can implode on you pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's really the importance of having a hiring process, which anybody who involves you, Wes, which at the end of this episode we'll talk about how people can connect with you through Unleashed. But involving you, it really becomes a system. It kind of functions with very little input from the business owner themselves. And for me, that's just been incredibly powerful to have a system that catches these things. So I don't even have to really think too much about it. I can kind of just keep moving forward.
Yeah. By the time you got these candidates, it was pretty narrowed down to exactly what would have been a good fit for our position.
Yeah. With very little input from me. I mean, we had like 2 1-hour calls, I think is all it was. So 2 hours is a pretty low investment amount to get the right candidates. So let's talk about that, Wes. You helped me hire this director of operations. Alec, he's starting here on September 28th. Can you tell our listeners more about what that process looked like and how you came alongside me and got me some quality candidates?
I can. I just want to say I can't tell you how excited I am for you and your organization. So that's going to be awesome.
So are we.
Good. So, I would say part of the magic is getting crystal clear on the outcomes you're looking for at the outset from the role. All right. And Luke, you'll remember, taking back to the very beginning, it's spending the time, whether you're working with an outside agency or just you as a business, to sit down and define not just the skills and the responsibilities for the role, but what does it look like if that person is doing a good job. Right. And so that's such a key part of the process, because from there, you are able to, the filter with which you are looking at these candidates, the questions that you're asking in the interviews, that you're filtering it through. Do I believe that they can help me get the outcomes, the measurables that we need for success in this role? And so, in that process, once you're clear on that on the front end, then, it's not, I didn't reinvent the wheel by any means, but it is, you're looking and screening the candidates that way. You tailor your interview questions that way. And it just allows things to become much more clear on the back end, so you can feel much more confident when you're finally making a decision and pulling the trigger on who you're going to bring onto your team.
Yeah, and that's in sharp contrast to how most companies hire, right? Most of them think of, it's kind of like, I want somebody I like, somebody who's kind of a do-gooder. There's really nothing bad about them, but there's really nothing great. I think they'd be fine for the job. Mm-hmm. Big difference between that and I know they can do the job.
Yeah, because we've done assessments to figure out how they, obviously their skill sets, and then what they're good at with the DISC assessment, how they communicate. All those things are important to understand where they're best suited to be in a role, right?
100%. Yeah, you guys nailed it. And, something that I didn't mention and you guys didn't bring up, but is a part of this, and it ties back into culture. When you think about a hiring process, I am a big believer in doing what I call a discovery day. And that is inviting the last 1 or 2 finalists into your business to spend a day or at least a half day with you, because your team matters. What they think matters. How you see this individual in the moment, interacting with those folks and getting feedback from them too. You tend to see more of who somebody really is. And then if you're building a team, there needs to be cohesiveness between that individual and the folks that you already have there in the fold.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, there's, unless you're maybe hiring like a personal assistant, for the most part, if you're hiring somebody, they're going to be working more with your team than they are with you.
Even a personal assistant.
Yeah, maybe even a personal assistant. But I mean, unless you have somebody who doesn't do anything else with the organization, they're like in a silo, they're going to end up, they're working 40 hours with those other people.
That's why it's important for them to be exposed to that group of people or that team. Yeah, just like Wes was saying. But we didn't really call it a discovery day, nor did we have anybody in there for an entire day, I don't think.
Ever.
But we've always...
That was a Wes original.
Yeah,
right there,
we've always incorporated a group interview, Wes. I don't know if Luke explained that.
Yeah, so he already had it. Wes already had it as part of his process.
Does he?
Yeah. He calls it something way better. We called it, what do we call it? It's just a group interview with the team, right? Yep. Without me present. You call it a cultural affirmation interview, which sounds so much better.
That's so good. Yeah, that's way better.
But we found that has been the tell-all. Without a lot of thumbs up, pretty much unanimous from the room, they're probably not going to fit in when their feet hit the ground. And that discovery day was a game changer.
It was awesome.
And I had never even considered that.
It kind of
before Wes
made a huge wavering decision. It made it pretty clear which candidate was best suited for our organization and the role.
Yep, it removed all doubts.
Yep.
It was very clear exactly where we're supposed to go. So, Wes, what are some red flags that tend to be overlooked by organizations when they're hiring?
So, some of this is going to be organizational specific and role specific, right? But there are three things that I like to pull out or try to affirm in a process related to the individual that I'm bringing through. And this is not an original from me, but it's something I strictly adhere to and really believe in. And that is, do I believe the candidate is humble, right? Has shown humility in their past and in their thinking and how they interact? Do I believe they're hungry, right? Are they driven, right? And then do I believe they're smart, like smart with people, not intellect? You need to be as smart as you need to be to do the job in front of you. Yep. But you got to be able to get along with people. And this is something I actually pulled from someone named Patrick Lencioni, and so I want to give him full credit for that. But I do believe if you don't possess all three of those, that those kind of envelop and wrap themselves around, the rest of the values that you may have, and they can very easily cause things to self-destruct.
Yeah, and I loved that part of our director of operations hiring process because you did the initial phone interviews for me, which was just a huge relief and load off my back as a business owner. I just can't speak highly enough of how relieving that was, because that really is like you end up filtering a lot of people out in that process, and so you kind of feel like you're spinning your wheels a little bit, but it's so important to get the real candidates. And then from the people that you chose out of the phone interviews, they got your hungry, humble, smart questionnaire. And it really clarified a lot of things that weren't clarified in the phone interview. So it's almost like a second opportunity for them to affirm or confirm that they are or aren't a good fit.
Expose their real self a little bit more.
Yeah, because they're now
selling themselves.
Well, they're kind of self-processing on paper.
Yeah,
what they believe about themselves.
Right.
And so it's amazing.
It reveals character. It reveals, how they really think in a situation.
I agree.
And so it was interesting how much that actually really that questionnaire really played itself out in the interviews themselves. What we kind of saw already.
So it was a big contributor for the vetting process for sure.
It was, yeah, and that was a step that I had never considered either. That and the discovery day were just huge leaps and bounds over our existing hiring process.
So Wes is the man, I'm telling you.
Yes.
Wes, what attributes should you look for in a potential hire? And what are some of the signs that would tell you that this person is the right or the great fit for that job?
Yeah, great question. So, similar with the red flags, some of the attributes are going to be role and company specific, but I believe this is you can teach most people most things, right? When you're talking about technical skills, hard skills for a job. What you can't do is teach people people skills, interpersonal skills, and emotional intelligence. Right? By the time they get to you as a business, for the types of roles you're typically hiring for, they're pretty developed in those things. And some of those are set right in their personalities and who they are. And so attributes to look for, I would be much more concerned and excited about finding somebody with those types of things, and then saying, you know what, I can teach them these two or three other things that maybe they're not as sharp as my wish list said I needed somebody to be. So I think that's a big one from attributes. And Eric, will you repeat the second part of that question for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some signs that would tell you that this person would be a great fit?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I'm going to go back to, again, some of it's role and company specific, but I know I plugged the humble, hungry, smart, yep. and I circle back to that because I do believe it's that important when you're bringing somebody into your team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you can't understate the need for a cultural fit and to know, really what it comes down to is, do you know this person well enough to know that they would do the job, whether the right person for the right seat, right? To use EOS terms. And you can't do that unless you take them through this. I mean, frankly, you need an exhaustive vetting process, and it's worth every minute you invest, because, you know, they estimate 20 to 30% of their salary is what it costs to onboard a new employee.
Well, then there's the saying, slow to hire, quick to fire, right?
Yeah, but nobody actually does that.
Nope.
They think that means take 8 weeks to make a decision. That's not what it means.
Nope.
So, hey, Wes, we got to wrap up here. We got about 40 seconds left in the show. How can people connect with you and get you involved in their hiring process? Yeah,
100%. So let me give you 2 ways. One is go to go.unleashed.academy, and you can find some more information there, or you could email me at wes@10talents, that's the number 10, at 10talentsco.com, and we could set up a time to talk.
Outstanding, Wes. Thank you so much for being on the show. And as always, listeners, you can connect with us at the Mardigian Agency on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Be Insured.